Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Oswego Alumni Podcast. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Oswego Alumni Association, SUNY Oswego, or any of its officials. Email us with guest ideas or any other feedback at alumni@oswego.edu.
Welcome to the Oswego Alumni Podcast. I'm your host, Dee Perkins. Whether you're a fan of the movie Twister or an avid Weather Channel watcher, today's interview is one you want to hear. Threats in Motion is the brainchild of today's guest and is a new way of tracking tornadoes and severe storms, and one day maybe used for lake effect snow. If you follow Greg on Facebook, you would see he not only tracks tornadoes using computer systems, he actually gets out in his car and is a storm chaser. Currently, he's a research scientist for the Cooperative Institute for Research in the Atmosphere at Colorado State University. Thanks for making time for us today. From the class of 1986, welcome, Greg Stumpf.
Hello, everyone.
Now, I know you recently changed jobs, and I realized, did I get that right? Is that your current location? Is that your current?
So my employer's in Colorado, but I'm actually located in Norman, Oklahoma.
Norman, Oklahoma, home of a lot of tornadoes, right?
Yes. And just one big one last year here in February, in fact. So, and I happened to be down here in town when that hit. I didn't see the tornado, but I saw the damage right after it happened. So.
One of the things that got me really excited about talking to you is I've followed you on Facebook for years. Full disclosure, Greg and I were on WOCR together a long time ago. So I've been seeing his videos for a while. In a couple of your videos, it sounds like you're chasing a tornado. And is your daughter with you?
There was a couple videos. My daughter's with me. Yeah. When she was younger, she used to chase with me. She actually lost interest in it as she got into the teen years. That's her thing. So, but she was with me on several big events back in like 2011, that time period. So
I love the sound of your voice with her. We're fine. We're a mile away. We're not going to get hit or anything. But to me, that sounds like a really wonderful education in a most terrifying way.
It is. I mean, that was the whole idea behind bringing her, was to, first of all, expose her to what dad does on his free time, but do it in a safe manner. So we're not like, I'm not one of those kind of storm chasers that you see a lot now in social media that get really, really close to the vortex. I mean, I have been close, but usually that's been inadvertent. But if I'm, within a mile, 2 miles away, if I can, sometimes the roads can't get you that close. So
most people, or in the movies that I've seen, say it sounds like a train, but a couple of times you talked about it sounding like a waterfall. Take us through it. What does it sound like? What does it feel like? I saw you also say, don't open your door. That's going to create a problem here in the car. So tell us what it's like to be that close to a tornado.
So, I've never heard the freight train sound that people have described it as. And I've only heard a few tornadoes in my career. And to me, it just sounds like a waterfall, a lot of air rushing through stuff. And because it's so large, of course, it's going to have that waterfall type sound. The bigger and closer I've been to a tornado, it sounds more like Niagara Falls, kind of a roar. If you've ever gone real close or through that tunnel, Niagara Falls, kind of like that. Smaller tornadoes, more of like a swishy sound, is what I've heard before, but never a freight train. To me, that is. Now, that doesn't discount the fact that others have heard that sound. They may be in different locations of the tornado, and every tornado is different. So
now that we're talking about the sexy stuff, let's move back. Your origin story is you went to Oswego in the 80s. You graduated with an MS in meteorology. What brought you there, and how did you get interested in weather?
Okay, so I grew up in Wappingers Falls, New York, downstate, or upstate if you're from New York City. Maybe upstate to UD. You're from Queens, right? Originally?
Yes, nice. Yeah, nice memory.
So anyway, Wappingers Falls, which is near Poughkeepsie, and looked around at a bunch of different schools with meteorology programs. My choice of Oswego was for several different reasons. One of them was cost because it was in state. That kind of helped with the cost for me. But Oswego had some unbelievably unique weather compared to some of these other locations. That it being on Lake Ontario, of course, the big one is lake effect snow, which is, can get crazy at times, of course. But other kinds of unique weather, just from being the proximity to the lake, happen as well, where you get these very interesting, like lake land circulations that can cause like even lines of thunderstorms just inland from the lake in the summer, and then just really wild temperature gradients and things like that. As you know, spring takes a long time to take hold in Oswego, but if you just drive 10, 15 miles south to Fulton, you can have a day down there in the low 70s, and Oswego is foggy and 42. So, so that was a big draw up there. The meteorology program, of course, was pretty well known during that time. Professor Robert Sykes was just finishing up as I got there in 1982, had retired within my freshman year. And actually, Bob Sykes and I became very good friends during the time I was there, as I did with some of my other meteorology professors as well. So that was the big draw for me. And actually, I'll correct you. I got my bachelor's degree at SUNY Oswego, and then I got my master's degree at Colorado State in Fort Collins, Colorado. So I left Oswego in '86, moved out there for 3 years and got my MS. And then after that, moved to Oklahoma, and I've been in Oklahoma since.
What brought you to Oklahoma?
Okay, weather. um, but kind of the mecca for severe weather research is the National Severe Storms Lab, which was based in Norman, Oklahoma. So it had always been a dream of mine to work there. And in 1989, I got my opportunity, interviewed for several positions, and eventually got hired on. And so I worked at the National Severe Storm Lab for about 15 years. And then I remained in Oklahoma throughout all of this. I took a position with the National Weather Service in 2004. And that position, I was responsible for helping bring the research and development of technologies to improve severe weather warnings from the research and development stage into actual operations with the National Weather Service. So I did that for a while. And then last October, I moved again and now work for what's called the Global Systems Laboratory in Boulder, Colorado. I'm a remote employee, so I'm still here in Norman, Oklahoma. And what the Global Systems Laboratory does, or what our division does, is the development of the technologies to improve severe weather warning. So I'm back in kind of to the development part of things again. So
Threats in Motion is your brainchild. Is that something you're still working on, or did you leave it back with the National Weather Service?
So that project came along with me to my new job. So yes, this is something that we've actually been developing probably close to eight to 10 years now. And essentially what that is every time a severe thunderstorm or tornado warning is issued, graphically, they attach what's called a warning polygon to the hazard. So you got the hazard here. Let me see if I can show it with my hands. I can't reverse. I'm not mirror image on the camera, so maybe I should do this the right way. Storm here.
Yeah, we're going to try and bring up the video that you sent me.
Yeah.
The video is so clear on what's going on.
And basically, you got this polygon, and with threats in motion, the polygon moves with the storm. Today, the way it works is a polygon gets issued, storm moves through the polygon, and then a new polygon gets issued. And that can actually lead to what we call non-uniform or inequitable lead times between the time the warning gets issued and the time the hazard hits somebody. So if you're just outside the polygon and you have to wait for the next polygon to get issued, your lead time is really, really small. But with a moving polygon, as soon as the front envelope of that polygon moves over you, you've got the warning. So, and that's all in the video. Are we going to show that video?
Yeah, we'll show it. We will absolutely, because
Okay,
that
great.
makes so much sense. In the video, though, it wasn't clear what the timeline is when the polygons are issued. So, let's say there's a polygon around Syracuse, and now we want to move it to Utica because the storm is moving. How long does it take for the National Weather Service to move that polygon?
So it's going to be dependent on storm motion, but let's say your typical storm motion is 30 miles an hour. How far apart are Utica and Syracuse? About
45 minutes.
45. Okay. So if there was a storm over Syracuse, usually if it's a tornado, the warnings are issued for about 30 to 45 minutes. So Utica would just be outside a warning like that. So it would, folks in Utica would have to wait until the tornado or the radar indication of the tornado is mostly through the polygon that's over Syracuse before a new polygon gets issued and Utica gets warned. So you can see there, Utica's waiting and waiting and waiting. Now, if that polygon was issued and started moving with the tornado, probably 5-10 minutes later, Utica would get warned. So instead of waiting 45 minutes.
And not only is this working on this is so important, I imagine, making sure the models are correct and in-house, doing that work in-house has to be extraordinarily important. But then the added layer is now you have to work with TV stations, radio stations, and I imagine the phone people to say,
Yes.
okay, now we're going to send out an EAS alert. And this is the way we're going to, mostly probably radio and TV. This is how we're going to track it. Can you adapt to the way we're going to do this now?
That's a great comment because that's our current challenge right now. We've developed the software to do the moving polygons, and that's pretty much ready to go. It's the dissemination part. That's what we call that. Disseminating the information to WIA, which is the automated cell phone alerts, but also to other private companies that have developed cell phone alerting systems, the kind that can tell you exactly where you are and you can see the image on your screen with radar and that kind of thing. Television broadcasters, emergency managers is another part of the stakeholder group that we work with in determining how we're going to disseminate these. So there's all different channels that warnings go out. But right now, none of those channels are set up to deal with moving polygons. You get a polygon, they wait for the next polygon. They can handle that very well, but a moving polygon, that's still yet to be determined. So that is our current and next big challenge before this finally gets out to the public, is how to deal with the dissemination portion of these warnings.
Would it be a software program that you would send the TV stations? I imagine instead of a static image, now it's an animated image.
So essentially, we have to find a new way to distribute or disseminate the data. And we're using, it's called CAP, Common Alerting Protocol formatting, which looks a lot like HTML code. And in there, we can prescribe, one of the things we could do is have all the different polygons. And by the way, these polygons update every minute instead of every 30 to 45 minutes. And we could have all those, like the 1 minute forecast, the 2 minute forecast, the 3 minute forecast. And in my opinion, it shouldn't be that difficult to be able to find a location and find out which of those polygons now intersects your location first. And that's the time you get warned. And and then from that point until the hazard is in that location is the lead time, that difference. So.
Right, because cell phones track us wherever we are. Cell phones really know where we are. So it shouldn't,
Yes.
I agree with you. It shouldn't be that hard.
Actually, and then the broadcaster side, of course, there's where the graphics will be for the most part. They're going to be wanting to show on the screen, they'll loop their radar showing where the storms are. And right now they'll put a polygon where the warning is. But now when they loop it, that polygon will be moving along with the hazard. And And we've actually had a few testbed experiments where we've invited in television broadcasters and emergency managers to receive the data for these moving polygons. We've got visiting weather service forecasters in one room creating the polygons, and then broadcasters and emergency managers elsewhere receiving the data and making decisions based on that. And even our broadcasters, we have in the National Weather Center building here in Norman, Oklahoma, we have a small room with a green screen, and they're actually doing practice broadcasts using the data and using the moving graphics.
One of the things I noted when I watched a video about how this works is it also not only gives you more lead time to know that a tornado is coming, find safety, find shelter, but when the tornado is gone, now it's giving you a quicker alert that you don't have to spend the next 20 minutes in your shelter. You can come out, the tornado has passed.
Exactly. It's what we call an all clear. We really don't have a mechanism for that now. We essentially will issue the warning. We'll tell people when the warning expires. Now, sometimes the warnings will be canceled before the expiration, but usually the cancellation messages currently don't go out until an entire county has been cleared out. So if only part of the county's been cleared out, you may not know that. You may be in that portion that's already been cleared out. So that's one of the things that Threats in Motion will also offer, is a better way to broadcast all clear information that's location specific based on your location. So
is your group focused on rolling this out in the areas where there are heavy tornadoes?
Well, our plan is to roll it out nationwide. But usually early in that process, we'll do what's called an alpha test, where we'll try it out at some of the forecast offices in the country. Now, we don't want to, we do alpha testing, we don't like to restrict it to one part of the country. So we'll probably alpha test this anywhere from 5 to 10 offices around the country, even the West Coast, where, except, this last few days, they've been getting tornado warnings out there in LA and San Diego area. So it's not completely out of the question out there as well. So
you led me right to my next question. So Los Angeles, I think this is going to be extraordinarily helpful in ways that we're not even thinking about. So Los Angeles had this huge rain. They called it a river of rain.
The atmospheric river.
There you go, atmospheric river. Would this system also be used in terms of flooding threats?
It could be. Floods work a little differently from tornado and severe thunderstorm threats. And that is because rain falls on a basin, and then the basin floods, like for a flash flood, and moves downstream. And the direction that it moves may be different from the way the storm is moving. So we may be able to do something along that line for like a larger river event or something. But basically, it's not as applicable to flooding as it would be for an actual moving threat. So you mentioned earlier, another kind of moving threat is snow squalls. Now, there's two kinds of movement in snow squalls. One, which we're all familiar with in Oswego, is lake effect snow. And that's usually a band that moves off the lake and then onshore. So it's kind of parallel to the orientation of the lake. And then where it sets up onshore, it can meander north and south. And usually that meandering is gradual until a cold front comes through and the wind direction changes suddenly. So that kind of snow squall, it may not be as amenable to, because the motion is pretty slow. But we get these other kinds of snow squalls along fast-moving winter cold fronts, and they can be moving 40 to 50 miles an hour through a region. And that's where Threats in Motion could be very helpful in terms of snow squall warnings for motorists and other people that could be impacted by this. So.
Yeah, I think Buffalo had a squall like that just, it's not exactly Threats in Motion because it just kind of started to snow and stayed.
Yeah, yeah.
Threats and not motion.
That's threats and not motion, exactly. So, um, but yeah, for the kind of cold front snow squalls, which are not just restricted to the lakes area, but those can happen a lot of areas around the country. That's where threats in motion could be very valuable.
What about hurricanes?
Well, hurricanes. So we kind of the way hurricanes are forecasted right now was kind of one of our inspirations for developing threats in motion. But with hurricanes, again, that's a lot more gradual. So you usually have good 12, 24, 48 hours of lead time for a hurricane coming on shore. So um, one of the things that would be useful in hurricanes is that when a hurricane makes landfall, a lot of times the outer bands will set up tornadic storms. So we could use the threats in motion within those outer bands to track the tornadoes that are associated with hurricanes as well. So now there's another kind of related project that I've been associated with for a longer time than that, and threats in motion kind of was born out of this, and that is what we call probabilistic hazard information, which is basically a probability plume that gets projected off of something like a tornado or a severe thunderstorm detection. And where that can be useful is that you can extend the potential for customized warnings for folks that are typically further downstream from where a typical warning might be issued. So, for example, like I said earlier, tornado warnings are usually issued for 30 to 45 minutes. But there are some situations, which happens more often out here in the Great Plains and the Midwest, where the kind of storms, supercell storms that produce tornadoes, can last for hours and hours. I've sometimes seen them last up to 8 hours, just traversing along, producing hail along its path and occasional tornadoes. And there are users out there that could stand to benefit about knowing whether or not a potential tornadic storm is 2 hours away. So these might be places like factories or hospitals that take a little longer to take preparation for an event like that. And what the probabilistic hazard information, what we call PHI, would help for them is to give them a lower probability value of a hazard, but with a longer lead time. So then they can determine through their own cost loss analysis whether or not they should take action 2 hours out from an event or not. And presently, there's no easy way to do that with the products that are routinely disseminated from the National Weather Service. They can do that when they're working with emergency managers and things like that, but it's not using actual digital or automatic information at this time. So
Awesome. So what's amazing to me is you were in school when I was in school. It's 2024, so it's 40 plus years, and you've been excited to talk about weather that whole time.
yes.
That does it kind of amaze you that you've been able to stay in the same field and keep that passion for weather all this time, or is it because there's been so much change in weather that it's always new?
Yes and yes. So yeah, I've had a passion for meteorology, and I followed my dream and I made it work for me is basically what I've done. I've had some of these thoughts and ideas about wanting to be involved with the improvements in the severe thunderstorm and tornado warning program, even as early as my time at Oswego. That's when I started to really get interested in what is called radar meteorology, and that's the understanding what storms look like through radar data. And that naturally follows. What naturally follows that is the warning program, because at least at that time, the primary instrument they used for issuing warnings was radar data. We look at more data now, like lightning data and satellite data and other things like that, for a more comprehensive look at things. But that I kind of followed my passion into that. And early in my career, I was doing the development of computer algorithms to help automatically detect things like rotation in storms and hail signatures. And that's kind of progressed to now developing better warning systems and the software that forecasters use to create and manage these kinds of warnings.
I gave you a heads up that we're going to have some fun now. I figured
Okay.
the questions that you get at dinner parties must sound something like this question: weather movies and your opinion on the weather science in weather movies. So we're going to do a quick fire of my three favorite weather movies. One, of course, we got to ask about Twister.
Okay. So Twister, for those of us back in the day when that movie came out in 96, was it? Some of us who were familiar with storm chasing went to see the movie, and it was a mixture of, hey, they got that right, and a mixture of groans. They got that really bad. One of the things, or some of the things that we particularly groaned about was that they were using terminology for the wrong stuff. So, and I can kind of understand that they heard the storm chasers use these words, but then they didn't follow through and determine exactly how these should be applied. So they applied them in the way they thought they were. So, but the one thing they did get right, I thought, was the camaraderie of research storm intercept teams. Which I've been involved with in my past experience as well. I've participated in a number of different field experiments where we went out and we chased storms with instrumented vehicles and tried to collect data around specific parts of these storms to help understand what makes them do what they do. They got that part very well, I thought. In fact, near the end of the movie, they're deploying Dorothy into the tornado, and Dorothy opens up and all these little probes go up into the sky. We kind of thought that was silly at the time, but now we're kind of doing that in a way, not with little tiny probes, but we're starting to develop unassisted aerial technology that can fly around storms and gather information. So that, I think, is really exciting. I know they're going to be showing an aspect of that in Twisters, which is the sequel to Twister, because I was present for one of the scenes of the filming where they were filming the UASs, the unstaffed aerial systems, and the reaction to the storm chasers and scientists and things like that. So I kind of snuck on the set.
Oh my God, I had
It was
no idea. I had no idea.
it,
This is out of left field that you're hitting me with this. Wow. They came to
so
Oklahoma to film?
yeah, and actually they're still here somewhere, or they may have wrapped up things already, but they had to take a break, of course, because of the strikes. But they filmed in various locations in Oklahoma, and actually I lived in Enid, Oklahoma for about a year and a half, and just moved back to Norman last October. So this took place just north of Enid, Oklahoma. I heard from I was at my bank, I think, and one of the tellers there said, "Yeah, they're filming right up the road, Highway 81." So I drove up there. There they were. So I kind of parked my car and started filming them kind of off camera. So, but anyway,
Ooh.
now that was my way of sneaking on one of their sets. It was an outdoor set. But back during the filming of the original movie Twisters, I was also present as an invited guest. During the filming of the scene where the truck drives through the house. They actually built a house on an elevated set that was tilted with ramps on either side and drove a truck through that and filmed with multiple cameras inside and outside the house, that truck going through the house. They filmed that just about a half mile north of where my office was in
Wow.
Norman, Oklahoma. And we're on the set, and we watched it. It was really good, and we were about to leave, And all of a sudden we hear this, hey, and we turn around and there's Bill Paxton. And he came over to chat with us. So he was such an amicable person on the set. He took pictures with folks. I didn't get a picture with him. Sadly, I should have done that. But Bill actually jumped, at least I know one day in 1995 while they were filming, he rode along as a passenger in one of the storm chase research vehicles and got to see a tornado. So I
I can't
wasn't there
believe
for that, unfortunately, but yeah.
the insurance
So
company
we
let
saw
him do that. Oh my God.
they did.
Wow.
So Helen Hunt was on the set, but she didn't come over to talk to us. She was a couple hundred feet away from us. We saw the actress who played Aunt Meg. I can't remember, Lois Smith. I think she's still around too, actually.
Well done.
So she was there too. So
yeah, when those jingling the things in front of her house start going off, you're like,
in Waukeeta, Oklahoma, which is a real place north of Enid. So that
wow.
house is gone now. They destroyed it for the movie and then they just tore it down. So
All
but
right,
anyway,
two more movies.
Twister.
The Perfect Storm. That is the seafaring guys out of Gloucester. And the weather part of it is these two storm cells are coming together, and the weather forecaster is like, oh, this is going to be an explosion.
So that movie, of course, is based on a true event that really happened. I read the book before I saw the movie, and the book, of course, with books you can get into more of the detail and things like that. And I thought they did a pretty good job of explaining the meteorology. Now, when you get to Hollywood, they put their flair on it and stuff like that. I don't think it was too bad. I think and then Hollywood adds the drama and all that stuff too. So, if you compare that to Twister, because it's based on a true event, I think it was closer to the actual meteorology of the event. And I think that was the first movie where they were really trying out new CGI for ocean waves. They did pretty good. I mean, it's much better now, but it wasn't bad. I was impressed at the time. So
yeah, I still love that movie. And you gave me a hint that this is going to be the big one, The Day After Tomorrow, the Dennis Quaid End of the World. Go ahead.
That one is so off the wall bad in terms of representing the meteorology. It's just not something like that will absolutely never happen. And I think there's that one scene where they're in Manhattan. You ever notice these big disaster movies always affect like New York, Washington, LA? I mean,
exactly.
So
yes, glad I'm
not
there.
Twister though. Twister was at the right with that. So but anyway, what was the one where the temperature suddenly dropped 100 degrees and there was this flash freeze and everything just shattered? It's like, no, not physically possible. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. The actual temperature freezing is crawling up Manhattan. It's like you can see things starting, and then all of a sudden it crawls up the building, and the building, all of the one floor at a time shatters.
Yeah, not possible.
Not possible. I love it. Well, my last question is always the Oscar speech. If you were being handed an Oscar, who in your time at Oswego would you want to thank?
Oh, okay. Well, I would definitely want to thank my meteorology professors and my friend Robert Sykes, who I mentioned earlier, but my other professors that I considered some of these folks mentors, and many of them are not with us anymore. But Dr. Gene Chermak, who passed away, Dr. Al Stam, who also passed away, Robert Ballantyne, Mark Wysocki. These four folks plus Bob Sykes really helped cement my love and passion for meteorology and my passion for getting into the research of meteorology. So I definitely want to thank them more than anybody else that I can think of. And then some of my friends that I met up there too that were in the program, Rob Perillo. He is now and has been a television meteorologist in Lafayette, Louisiana for a long time now, and he is well known down there. He may be somebody else you want to pick for the podcast at some point. Jim Ledoux, was my cohort at Oswego, and he actually lives in Norman, Oklahoma, and works down here as well. So I want to give those folks a big thanks for help, forwarding my career. Unfortunately, I don't remember all their names, but also the folks that helped, and Rob Perillo was one of them, get me into position my senior year while I was at Oswego. I got an undergraduate research position with the James A. Fitzpatrick nuclear plant, and worked in their emergency operations facility in Fulton my senior year there, and learned a lot about, really started applying computer programming toward a job at the time, and developing at the time radiological dose assessment models that were used in case there was a nuclear leak. And we could quickly run this one model to show where areas downstream from the plants might need to be immediately evacuated before they get into more large scale response. So that was a great opportunity I had while I was there.
You love working on terrifying things.
Yeah, I know.
Worst case scenario, send Craig in. He's going to find things
Yes.
out. Well, I'm so honored to talk to you. The things you're working on are not only wonderful for the world of communications and weather, but they're going to save lives. And so I'm really going to be excited to see Tim rolled out and say, I knew him when. Anyway, thanks for making so much time for us. You can find Greg on LinkedIn. We're also going to include the link to the piece on YouTube about the system that he's worked on, so you can see it for yourself. It's amazing. And if you want to reach out to us with guest ideas, you can find us on Facebook or on LinkedIn, or you can email us at alumni@oswego.edu. We are always looking for guest ideas from our over 92,000 Oswego alumni. I'm Dee Perkins, and we'll see you next time on the Oswego Alumni Podcast.